so Samantha, it's very
Hello.
exciting, yes, to see you today and have a chance to be able to talk about your new book. And I will let you introduce actually the name of the book, etc. But it's exciting to hear that soon the book will come through our letterboxes or from our postman. And what I hear is maybe because you're in Portugal, we might receive it before you. And so that's quite fun too. But I wanted to ask you, why did you decide to write this particular book on seated dance? Because it might seem strange to some people, particularly because you're an able-bodied dancer yourself. So I wondered how on earth it came into your head to get involved with that.
Well, I was really moved by all those people we saw on TV during COVID that were sitting in the care homes, not moving and looking very sad. And at the time, I was doing a master's in mental health and well-being. So I started to research seated dance, how to get those people to move, even though they were seated there, and give them some joy.
Mhm.
And I then was introduced to a social prescriber who got me a job teaching the Reconnect group in Wiltshire under the Wiltshire funding seated dance. So I started to practice it. And I then started to develop a teaching model and think about seated dance. And then it was during the RAD when I did a webinar to teach teachers seated dance that I started to think, well, I could actually take these resources and write a book about it. And it was also very useful that I was writing a lot of essays about the theory side of mental health and well-being. And I brought in seated dance. And so it was theory and practice really put together. And then it sort of came out really after the COVID time.
That's fantastic. Well, we're really excited to read it, and I, for one, will be learning a lot, hopefully, from the book because I do a little bit of Cheerio teaching,
Yes.
and I love that name.
Thank you.
So I noticed that on the front of the book that you have a lovely picture, which was taken by your husband, who's a very successful photographer. So has that been helpful to you to have a successful photographer close by?
Yes, exactly. And also, what's so interesting is your husband is also featured in one of the little pictures on
I know.
at the bottom, Jerry. And I'm so pleased because I wanted to show in the book that, we obviously teach men as well. And this is a difficult thing in dance to encourage the males into dancing. And so it was great that he was a good sport and took part in that. So, yes, Kit, he's so artistic and he's got that artistic. He's a bit of a Da Vinci. He's got that artistic and engineering technical mind, and that really helped with photography because you need an artistic view and a. I mean, we spend a lot of time going to art galleries together, and that's how we met. Actually met in art class, an adults art class in St. Albans. So I think that's always been a passion for both of us. So I'm absolutely delighted. And this Saturday, tomorrow, yes, he will be holding an exhibition of Silver Coast portraits, people that he's photographed here on the Silver Coast in Portugal. So I'll be supporting him.
You got the exhibition that you just did a television program with an English ITV, wasn't it?
Yes, we're on
ITV program.
ITV this morning last week.
Yeah.
Jake Quickenden presented it. I think it was a competition to win £100,000 and to have a new life in Portugal, sort of, a new life in Portugal.
Wow.
And of course, I wrote in and we got onto the program and I was able to do seated scarf
Yes.
dance with
Excellent.
Jake
Excellent.
on TV, which was
Yeah.
great to show the dance.
Yeah.
So hopefully,
So apart from your husband, is there anybody else that in your life who's inspired you particularly through dance and through your work with?
well, I know it's going to sound a bit sort of cliched, but it's got to be my mum. And the reason it's my mum is because she was ex-Royal Ballet School. So actually, she was she was a major figure in my life. She was like my main teacher, and she was just the best. Because when I went to London and studied elsewhere, I didn't have that kind of teacher. When you've got she went to the Royal Ballet School, so the artistry of my mum when she did that tarantella in grade 3 or the Russian dance in grade 4 up here somewhere. And the other one is Sir Ken Robinson.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
because I'm really sad he's passed
Yeah,
away. He is the great creator of education, the educational
absolutely.
creative
Yeah,
guru. So for me, it's got to be Ken Robinson.
yeah, absolutely.
So Ken.
Talking about that and something that Natasha mentioned, how does the dance artist teacher transform a seated dance class beyond, as once was described as a physiotherapy session, to music, to something magical containing artistry, fun, and imaginative? And how does that, how do you achieve that?
Well, that's a very good question. I actually did have to think about the structure and it a bit scientifically as well. And in my book, you've got PERMA, which is the mental health and well-being structure, but you've also got AMBLE, which is how you structure a class. So if anybody's thinking of getting the book, the good thing about it is it gives you AMBLE, the structure for planning a seated dance class, which is activity, memory, balance, limbering, and expression. So with those elements in your class, it works really nicely. So I thought a lot about that. With regard to the artistry, I think what actually inspired me was a Parkinson's course, because it was one of the very first courses I did. And I remember Mark Morris doing a whole sort of sailor's dance or looking out to sea. Do you remember that, Natasha? I can see you doing it. And I thought, golly, this is a dancer, and he's really bringing the narrative in. And I have seen other seated dance teachers who just sort of do an exercise and warm up their hands and everything, but it's a bit boring. And I think if you do the Dance for Parkinson's introductory course, you will see Mark Morris dancing and you will be really inspired by that. I was, and I thought, right, you can do seated dance using drama like we do in ballet. Ballet is a very narrative art, and I think that you have to bring in an element of storytelling into your seated dance class.
Well,
Other ways we are artists as ballet teachers, all of us here. So I think bring in, the history of the ballets. I mean, one of my videos is Swan Lake. So I teach them all the arms and we do all the mime, my mother's tears. I remember teaching them all that, the big lake, and you can do all of that in the chair. It's wonderful. I've also done cha-cha-cha with handmade maracas out of a plastic teacup thing. I made beans and done cha-cha-cha with my feet. So actually, because now the RAD is extending the dance genres to all styles, the next thing I'm doing is seated tap dance, singing in the rain, is the theme. And it's with Melissa Renner in the US, who has invented a seated tap shoe that you fit over your shoes.
wow.
Um, for older people who can't get the
Yeah.
tap shoes on, she's got these rubber little tap shoes you put on top. She was wearing them the other day when I was talking to her. So really, I think the world is your oyster. And I think also it should stop being just about people who have learning difficulties. It should be, or physical challenges, should I say.
Yeah.
It should be for everybody.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah. Okay, good. And it also brings to mind, again, something that Sasha mentioned, which is music. So that is also a little bit tricky with, I think I've noticed a little bit more tricky when you're teaching cherry or seated. And I'm also interested to know if anybody here has actually seen the David Plumpton CD, which the RAD produced, which I was thought, not because of David Plumpton, but I thought the choices maybe was a little limited. What sort of music does inspire you, or do you obviously think of themes by what you're saying, Swan Lake or all the different things then. Talk a
Yeah,
little bit about music.
a really good question. Perhaps some people could join in in a minute, but I think that you can really choose any music. I think anything from jazz to ballet to popular music, depending on your theme, of course. So Sweet Caroline, just comes to mind. So we did Sweet Caroline, seated dance, Sweet
Yeah.
Caroline. Da, da, da. And they loved it, absolutely loved it. But I used that theme because I think about music in themes. We're doing Singing in the Rain. Don't forget it is actually April.
Yeah,
So April showers, quite often I'll look at what's going on. So International Dance Day is the 29th of April. And we'll be doing, because it's April, Singing in the Rain, which I thought seated, which is quite important. So often we talked about the theme, the music will simulate the
yeah,
theme,
yeah,
and you can use any style that you want to. I wouldn't suggest garage or anything with you know
yeah,
anything blatantly horrible, but just nice pieces of music. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And also sometimes it's useful if you're probably going to use music that the people that you're with teaching would recognize. And if they're older learners, perhaps some music from the past. I mean, obviously singing around, but those sorts of things that might, right.
Well, Sue, you really reminded me there, because actually I didn't point that out. But what Sue's just said is really important, because if you're working with Alzheimer's and people with memory loss, then it's really, really important, thanks, Sue, that you use music that they can remember, because it brings up connectors in the
Yeah,
brain.
apparently, yeah, very good. And also props, I think to an extent talked about scarves, I know, and you've talked about maracas. So, and I think you really do use props as well, which I think is an interesting aspect.
I think you can use anything. You could use bowler hats. Don't forget that you can change the genre. So you could use tap shoes. Um,
Yeah.
they're not really a prop, but it's kind of a
Mhm.
different
Yeah, yeah,
style.
yeah.
So you've got different
Things to
things
think
there.
about. Yeah.
What else have I used? I think I've used maracas and scarves mostly, because the scarves get the soft hands.
Yeah.
And don't forget you can
Samantha,
do sharp movements and soft movements.
so what has been the most difficult part of writing and publishing the book? I do a little bit of, I know Routledge, or however you pronounce it, is a very famous, well-known publisher. So you're very lucky that they accepted you. And I know that it was quite an ordeal to actually, by the time you're backwards and forwards and telling them, they're saying yes, more questions. I know it's quite difficult. And plus, there would be obviously certain hoops to go through to continue, and I suppose ongoing, I suspect as well, and financially. So I'd just like to hear if there's anything particular, and then I'll just maybe jut in with a little bit of the self-publishing aspect as a comparison.
Hmm. Well, the business proposal you sent first in, I did a lot of research, and there really wasn't a guidebook for teachers on how to teach seated dance as a very generic, eclectic thing. So I also researched how many disabled people there were in the world, and I put forward a lot of facts to Routledge about this. I also knew from meeting you guys and talking to you guys and knowing how we felt in COVID. And because I've been a dance teacher ever since, 30 years, 35 years, I know how dance sort of progresses. As educators, we're all educators, and we can see our world of dance, if you know what I mean, and where it's going. So I thought, well, jolly well need to have a seated dance guidebook, because how on earth do you teach this thing? And when it was accepted, they felt it was really on trend. They'd read all the research figures, and that was really good. And 2 years on, we got the book. I mean, it's a long time.
Yeah, I must say I'm not as patient as you. And when I started looking for publishers for my I got this really big book that tells you all the people you can and applied to, and I discovered various different websites. But every single publisher seemed to need this first chapter, last chapter, or different things. And I just thought I really can't be bothered with that. And sorry, I'm not patient. And my brother had self-published, and so I used his example and used the company that he'd used. Um, and so we don't because of that. I have a certain flexibility because I can say what goes in and nobody else can tell me. So I choose. But also, I don't have any help from a publisher with, at this point, for example, it has to be my initiative to keep selling. So, you're very lucky to have that, even though it's been hard. So, yeah.
Okay, well, that's good.
I'm
I
going to
think,
do my thing as well now.
oh yes,
Those
it's
people that don't
wonderful.
know.
I love that picture. It's absolutely wonderful, Sue. And I've got a copy of it at
You're
home.
going to, you're going to put up your picture as well of the front of your book.
Uh, I
So
can
people
do,
can
yes.
see it. Libraries should have them as well.
Yeah. Also languages. I think it should be in
Ah,
different languages
oh,
as
yeah.
well. I think
That's
that's
another
really
thing.
important.
So the other thing is that I wanted just to ask you
Yes.
very briefly, um, do you feel that large dance organizations, teaching organizations, for example, ICD, RAD, BBO, etc., Laban, do you think they do enough as far as seated or additional needs for additional needs, people with additional needs?
Well, the RAD have the Radiate scheme, and
Yes.
one of the people who works in that is Anna Nichols, and she's actually in the book.
Yeah.
She's done a whole case study
Yeah.
talking about kids, actually, kids and seated dance.
Yeah.
And I think that they never do enough, really, if you think about it. I think that really it those organizations should be more inclusive. I think they're starting to, though,
Yeah.
to be honest. I think they're starting to get there on the mental health and well-being, and also seated dance and things, but I think that it could go much
Yeah.
further.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about the scheme you're running, by the way, Sue, for in schools?
Special needs.
Yeah.
Well, it's a charity that I started about 30 years ago in the northeast of England, and they after I married Jeremy, went to America. Another person took over his chair, and they've been very successful. Um, they now fund teachers, dance teachers, ballet teachers, going into, I think it's 18 to 20 schools now weekly, and to do classes with particularly schools with special needs. So I've been thinking, trying to do something in this area, in the south, in the East Anglia area. So we're starting with a course for teachers in a school locally here where they have a unit which is special needs. And I understand that two of the other special needs schools, the people from there are coming. So we've got local teachers coming to be taught by somebody who actually has worked at the RAD as well in that Radiate program. So that's in April. So if you could all just do a little prayer that we managed to get going, and it'll be a not-for-profit organization to begin with. And we'll have to do some fundraising and see if we find teachers that are prepared to go into local schools. So we'll see how it goes. I'll let you know.
I mean, just one thing I want to say is I just think it's written in my book as well, the connection between big organizations like Age Concern and Parkinson's and the education, the public education that we have in the UK. I'm obviously now in Portugal, so it's different. I would just like to point out that the connection is very poor. So they don't know we're great dance teachers, and we know that we can help people in the society, but never the twain will meet. Natasha's nodding her head. I mean, it's just crazy. We are very advanced teachers with very great qualities, but we're not connected to Age Concern, Alzheimer's, big societies like this, so they don't know about us. And there was a report from the RAD which was that most of Britain don't know that you need to be qualified to be a dance teacher. That we're very well qualified and very able to do the job, and they should connect with us.
I'd be interested then, Samantha, if we may, at this point, open it up so that if anybody
Yes.
the higher education publisher is likely to place the seated dance book with dance lec. Can you put your sound on now, Natasha?
Yes, yes. I was just thinking about some of the earlier conversation about distribution. What's great about Routledge is they all those books will go out to all universities. The dance degrees around the world should be getting your book,
yeah,
and you'll be cited in students' essays. So the new babe students coming into the Royal Academy of Dance BA Ballet Education, so they'll be looking out for that. So you must give a talk if you can to the degree students at the RAD as well, because that will be so inspiring for them.
Maybe
and
we'll
particularly community practice is where a lot is happening now. So